Okay, so my last question is hopefully a little bit more hopeful. So, can you tell us about what decolonial resistance movements have inspired you? So, maybe one or a couple of examples.
Yeah, I have a couple, and without doubt, the Zapatistas in southern
Hmm.
Mexico and the Mayan communities, the workers' landless movement in Brazil, and the many indigenous and student movements of Latin America have really inspired me to think about just the decolonial implications of their movements. So in my dissertation research, as I mentioned before the interview, um, was focused on the student movement in Honduras, and I worked with them. I participated in protests, in public assemblies, and so forth. So just to contextualize the student movements in Latin America, they're a little bit, they have a long history. Since 1918, for instance, they unsettled the colonial foundations, some of the colonial foundations of the university, and reclaimed or configured the university and as an autonomous space,
Yeah.
where shared governance, where students had equal decision-making power, for instance, in all governing structures, not like, like a committee or something like that. No, they actually form part of the university council. So in Honduras, this also happened. There was a broad-based student movement in the 1950s that demanded the autonomy of the university, where they would have equal decision-making power. They had 50% of the votes in the university council. They were able to hire the president of the university, determine the budget of certain things, how related the curriculum was to social and political justice, and all of these things. However, with neoliberal reforms, these things began to be stripped away. And in 2009, with the coup in Honduras that overthrew the president, the democratically elected president, Manuel Zelaya, which was a US-backed coup, students began to organize within the National Autonomous University. And it became this broad-based social movement. So it wasn't necessarily only a student movement trying to reclaim and regain the autonomy that they had lost through neoliberal reforms, but it was a broad-based social movement in that they were trying to reconfigure or restructure the university to make it a place in which other social movements could participate. They occupied the university for 3 trimesters within the period of 2 years. Indigenous movements, Black movements, campesino movements, and leaders also occupied the university and participated in the public assemblies. So all of these things that were happening really allowed me to see that student movements in Latin America are not necessarily only resisting, let's say, the privatization of the university, but are in fact trying to reinscribe new meaning to the university, to create a space or a space of convergence. And this is the ongoing project that student activists are working. How do we make the university a place in which social movements can get together, where the diversity or the multiplicity of demands can be heard, where they could articulate themselves within a broader social movement. So that's what allowed me to think through this concrete struggle, try to think through the political and decolonial implications using terms such as coloniality, since it allowed me to make the relationship between what governance is and curriculum. I think a lot of times the discussion that dominates the discourse is the decolonization of the curriculum, right? So we see the symbolic aspect of it, but what student movements are really pointing to is that you cannot decolonize the curriculum without actually changing the governance structures in place within and beyond the university. So what they're pointing to is if we don't have equal decision-making power, changing the syllabus or adding more content is not necessarily changing the power dynamics, and it's not changing the terms of the conversation. So that's what they're trying to get at, and that's what I'm writing about, as I also think about the real implications of the student movement. So that's my major work, and I use decolonial thought to think about the concrete implications of student movements.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think it chimes a lot with what Indigenous activists and academics and students are saying also in this place, that definitely, as Eve Tuck and Wayne Yang have written, decolonization is not a metaphor. But we're seeing, I think, and students might be aware, with the indigenization of the curriculum, a similar approach to sort of trying to do this from the top down without really thinking about the power structures of the university and how that filters down to even the fact that we have very little student mobilization on our campuses, and why is that historically? We should get to know. Okay, so thank you so much for talking to me today. This has been really, really useful and helpful, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.